Welcome to another Manhood Monday episode. Thank you guys for joining me. Man, I am glad to be in front of you tonight. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but we're going to get this done, right? So, in this episode of Manhood Mondays, I'm going to be talking about becoming a better man. 6 things that help us thrive or to make us thrive. Now, when I was thinking about this, my goal is to help you go from the surviving neighborhood to the thriving neighborhood. And so in line with that, I took the word thrive, create an acronym. And so these 6 things that we can do to help us thrive come from the word thrive, right? THRIVE. And so that's how we're going to walk down these 6 things. And I'm just jump right in and go ahead and get started so that I can finish and we can do question and answer at the end if you want. So make sure I pull back up my notes. Is everybody here? Or at least my one person that was online that helped me work all this stuff out. And if my sound starts to sound crazy, somebody let me know. But we're going to venture on through this whole ordeal, okay? So here we go. So the first value that you need to have if you're going to thrive, you need to value time, right? You need to value time. You need to value time. If you're going to thrive in your life, you have to value something that we don't have a whole lot of, and it's limited, and that's time. Right? The reason you want to value time is because you only have a limited amount. And when time is gone, you can't get it back. Right? When you do not value time, I can guarantee you will waste it. You will waste it. When I was on vacation last week, I was writing this list of things that hinder me from being my best self. And I named the list the destroyers, right? These are things that are destroying the road that it takes for me to get to success. That's what I would say. So these are called destroyers. At the top of my list of my destroyers was procrastination. Procrastination is my biggest barrier to the next level. Procrastination is a thief of dreams, right? If you're going to be great at anything in life, you're going to do it with the allotted time that you have, right? You can't use somebody else's time. You got to use your time. My main message to you tonight is to stop wasting time, right? Also last week, I saw a t-shirt that said procrastinators, leaders of tomorrow. And when I saw it, it was funny at first. But then I was like, wait a minute, that's me. It wasn't funny anymore. Because the thing is this, tomorrow is not real. Since we've been on the planet, we have never, ever known the future. Now, should we plan for the future and plan for what should come? Absolutely. But we don't live our lives as if the future is certain, right? Don't ever forget this. Life is not happening in the future. Life is not happening in the past either, right? Life is only happening right here, right now, moment by moment. This is an important note because oftentimes we can't enjoy life in the present because we're stuck in the past or worried about the future. Dr. Marx calls trying to live forward looking at the past, he calls it a past created future, right? So here's an illustration of what a past created future looks like. Imagine that there's an artist, and this artist wants to paint a picture that's in his mind. Now, before he paints the picture on the canvas, it only exists in his mind, okay? In order for him to get what's in his mind onto the canvas and for it to be what he had in his mind, the canvas has to be blank. It can't have something on it already. If the canvas is not blank, then he cannot create the image in his head that he wanted to put on the canvas. In the same way, we live our lives. So I'm giving you guys this Manhood Monday stuff, and I'm giving you all these tips and tools on how to be your best self. Well, you won't be able to do that if, as you are trying to create your future, you are stuck on your past, i.e., if your future canvas isn't blank. You are living a past created future. And that's a time issue, because the more you live in the past, the more you can't do what you need to do in the present, in the future, right? This is how a lot of us lives. But I want to encourage you, when you value time, you'll value when and where you do whatever. You'll value, you'll take more consideration into what you accept and don't accept, what you agree to and what you don't agree to, because you value time. If you're going to thrive, you're going to have to value time so that you will not waste it living past hurts and fears, but also so that procrastination is not your default, right? Now, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your time. Just make sure that you make the best of it, okay? You cannot thrive in life if you don't value time. That's just what it is. You cannot thrive in life if you don't value time, because you're going to miss opportunities. You're going to miss, you're going to miss so much. My wife may feel like, well, sir, you don't value time the way you should because you're always late. And that's true. I am often late. I'm working on it though, because I do value time and I want that to show up in my behavior, right? I saw this and I wanted to share it with you. So to realize the value of a year, ask a student who's failed their final exam. To realize the value of a month, ask a mother who has given birth to a premature baby. To realize the value of a week, ask an editor of a weekly newspaper. To realize the value of a day, ask a daily wage laborer who has 10 kids to feed. To realize the value of an hour, ask a couple waiting for the wedding ceremony. To realize the value of a minute, ask the person who just missed the train. To realize the value of a second, ask the person who just survived an accident. Learn to value time and don't take it for granted. You feel me? All right. Now, the second thing you want to value, the first one is time. The second thing you want to value is humility. Humility is very important because it is the answer to one of the destroyers in my book, which is pride. Pride is a destroyer of love. Humility is the answer to pride, right? So the thing about humility is not about humility is not about thinking less of yourself. It is about thinking of yourself less. Okay? Say that again. Humility is not about thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Men who value humility are strong men of character. The reason that humility is necessary for you to thrive is because no human can thrive without having quality relationships. And no relationship can be quality when the participants in the relationship are prideful. Humility is actually the only way for a man to love his wife the way God wants him to. Some of you may not have known that. Humility is necessary if you're going to love your wife the way God wants you to. Now, I wanted to have a slide for this, but time got away from me. I didn't manage my time well. But time got away from us. I wasn't able to give you a slide, so I'm just going to have to read this to you. But listen to what Ephesians 5:21 through 26 says. It says this, and further, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. For wives, this means submit to your husbands as to the Lord. For a husband is the head of his wife, as Christ is the head of the church. He is the savior of his body, the church. As the church submits to Christ, so you wives should submit to your husbands in everything. Now, let me pause for the ladies watching. This is why you have to be careful of who you marry. It's always disheartening to me when I see women who want what God wants for their lives, but then they are dating someone who does not want what God wants. This is also the reason so many women have an issue with submission in general, because they are married to or have been dealing with men who are not qualified to be their head. So they get frustrated with this whole submission thing because, he's wanting you to submit, but then he's not loving you the way he says. Because then watch this. When you get to verse 25, it says this. So Paul was telling what submission means, because he said submit to one another. Then he told the wives what it means. But listen to what he says to the men. Verse 25, it says, "For husbands, this means love your wives as Christ loved the church. He gave himself up for her." Now, for the longest, I did not understand how the husband is the head of the wife, but they are both equals. I didn't get it. He's the head, but they're equals. Even Paul, in his example, he says, "Husbands, love your wives the way Christ loved the church." Christ is not equal to the church. So how then do we explain this idea of the husband and wife being equals? The answer to this question is found actually in Philippians 2, verse 6. Yeah, Philippians 2, verse 6. Watch this. "Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on the cross." Did you hear it? The humility. I'll explain it. So, as I was thinking about husbands loving their wives the way Christ loved the church. By the way, you can grasp this concept regardless of what you believe spiritually, because it's a principle on how to treat your wife. That's the thing that I'm trying to communicate to you. So even if you don't believe in Christianity or Christ, you still can take this principle and apply it to yourself and your marriage, and you do well. Okay. Now, so I was thinking about husbands loving their wives the way Christ loved the church, and I realized that it is the humility that makes marriage work the way God intended. Although the church is not equal to Christ, him choosing to humble himself made him become equal. Do you see that? Right? When Jesus walked the earth, sinners gravitated to him. Why? Because he treated them as equals. He treated them as equal human beings. I'm not better than you. You're not better than me. Even though literally he was. He even told his disciples in John 15:15, "I no longer call you servants, but I call you friends," making them equals. Okay? So as a husband, although you have authority over your wife, according to God, you making the choice to walk in humility causes you to use that authority for us as opposed to selfish ambition. So then now, this makes what Dr. Mark said in his lecture on the power of us even more profound, because it does not erase what Paul wrote. Right? You want to value humility if you're going to thrive, because humility is the thing that's going to help you treat your wife the way she should be treated. I shared this with my wife, and I said, babe, I got to get to the place. I got to keep working on when I talk to you. Here's an example. I'm giving you this example. When I talk to you about something that I think is common sense or that you should know, I need to talk to you in a way as if we're equals, and not where the tone comes off as you're stupid or I'm above you. Right? Even if I know what you don't know, even if it's within my right to do this, that, or whatever, Humility says, make the playing field equal so that your wife feels like she has a say. You feel me? So humility being one of the values that you hold to will help put you on the road to the thriving neighborhood, right? Humility, let me say this too. Humility is not about allowing people to run over you. It really is about the way you serve your wife and your community. Okay? So that's the second one, humility. Now the third one, the R, where does R come from? So the R, the next value is responsibility. That's the third value. Responsibility is what separates boys from men, right? Some of the things that you are responsible for, I shared some of these last week, but here's some of the things that you're responsible for. Your life, right? Your life is yours. God gave it to you to make great. He's not going to make it great for you. He'll work with you, but your life is yours to make great or not. You're responsible for your words and your behavior. Stop using the excuse of she made me do this or he made me say that, right? You are responsible for your words and your behavior. You're also responsible for your feelings. No one can make you feel anything. Your feelings come from what is going on inside of you. And you are responsible for what is going on inside of you. That's not another person. I tell people all the time, yes, you can ask your partner or whoever to stop pushing your buttons, but it's more effective if you deactivate the buttons because they're yours. Your partner may be pushing the buttons, but they didn't give you the buttons. If you deactivate them, then they can't push them. That's when you're in control and not them. So you don't have to rely on them to not push the button. You've deactivated them, right? Here's something else you're responsible for. The love that you give or don't, right? You are 100% responsible for the love that you give your partner. And if you try to make it as if they're responsible, like, I'm going to love you, you love me, or I'm going to give if you give, that's not love. Okay? Love doesn't work that way. So, here's something else. I said this last week. You're responsible. I believe men were responsible for the protection of women and children. Now, how that responsibility shows up may be different for every man, but we are responsible at a certain level to our women and children. Okay? You're responsible for your work. Now, when I say work, I don't mean your job necessarily. The work that I'm talking about is your work in life that you've chosen to do that will impact lives other than the people in your house. That's the work I'm talking about, right? Your work may be different than your job. I'm fortunate to where my work and my job are one and the same, right? But it's up to you to find out what your work is, i.e. your purpose, and then to walk in that, right? Why are you here? What is the problem that God created you to address? You want to figure that out. Without living life on purpose, i.e. knowing what you are responsible for, i.e. knowing your work, you will not reach the Thrive neighborhood. It's just not going to happen, right? Now, let me say this too. When I say thrive, I'm talking about things clicking on all cylinders. I'm talking about as a human being. I'm not talking about material possessions, not talking about money. I'm not talking about land, right? I'm talking about your mental and emotional health, because that is the only thing, whether you believe it or not, that is the only thing that can, how can I say, thrive. No, that's the only thing that can help you thrive or kill your happiness. I'm trying to think of a different word for happiness, but my point is this. All the outside stuff, external stuff, you don't need those things to thrive. Like, you don't need a nice car to thrive. There are folk who live in the ghetto with very little. They can be happy. They can, well, I don't know if that's thriving, though. That might not be thriving. But I think you get my point. Let me not go down a place that's not in my notes and stick to my notes, right? We're going to the I. The next value, the next thing that you want to value, the fourth value is insight. Now, when I talk about insight, I'm speaking of wisdom and understanding, right? Those are different words for insight. These are crucial to your ability to thrive. Effective change, watch this. Effective change requires insight plus action, okay? Insight without action is passivity. Action without insight is impulsive. Insight plus action leads to clarity and better choices. I like what Proverbs 3:13 through verse 18 says. Joyful is the person who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. For wisdom is more profitable than silver and gold, and her wages are better than gold. Wisdom is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare to her. She offers you long life in her right hand and riches and honor in her left. She will guide you down delightful paths. All her ways are satisfying. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who embrace her. Happy are those who hold her tightly. Now, reading all of that, this is from one of the wisest men to ever live. And he calls wisdom a female, and he's saying, if you have her, you have life. I co-sign that. Trying to live life without insight or without wisdom, man. So I'm preparing this lesson called the conscious partner, because a lot of times we live life at the unconscious level. We just go through life, just going through the emotions. Well, when you have insight, you don't just go through the emotions, but you live life intentionally. When you value insight, you won't be guided by your passions and your desires. This is important because if you're going to lead your family to the metaphorical thriving neighborhood, you have to value insight. Impulsivity is another one of my destroyers. Right? That's on my list, impulsivity. Jesus said, don't build a house unless you first count the costs. Because if you do, you may run out of money before you're able to finish, and then you're going to be embarrassed. So he says, don't do that, right? That's about insight and preparation. Now, the only reason that preparation isn't on this list of 6 is because I was trying to use the letters from the word thrive, and there's no P in thrive. However, insight speaks to preparation, right? And preparation is the difference between a pandemic being uncomfortable and it being life-shattering. Preparation does not prevent the storms of life, but it helps you survive them so that you can thrive afterwards. But the thing is, if you don't survive if you don't survive the storm, then you can't thrive because you're stuck in the storm. In case you hadn't made the connection, like I said earlier, all of these are internal things for you to address, not external things. Now, moving on to the next value, the V, the fifth value is vulnerability. Now, as a man, this is one of the most difficult things for us to do. You've heard me say that before, although as humans, we are created for connection. As boys, men are often raised for disconnection, right? We are raised as if we'll never get married, never love a woman, never have children, never lead a team. And as if, flat out, if we're not human, that's how we're raised. Why? Because by the time boys are 5, most of the emotional foundation that is needed to build a thriving life has been stolen. We're told to be tough and to man up, and men don't cry. Sadly, there are grown women who still hold their man to this standard. There are women who still hold their man to this inhumane standard of toughness, while at the same time wanting him to treat her with kindness and respect and to share his heart. No one can be strong all the time. That's not even the requirement. The thing about vulnerability is that it has been so negatively stigmatized that men are not even aware that they need it. Here's the thing. Since we've been on the planet, we humans have always thrived on love. Always. Always have, always will. At the end of the day, all 6 of these values are for the purpose of being a better lover. Lover of self and lover of others. But when you lack the ability to be vulnerable, you also lack the ability to love and be loved deeply. Now, the opposite of vulnerable is closed off. So many men come into my office who are afraid to share how they feel. They're afraid to share what's going on inside. And sadly, actually, some of you just determined, well, that's not me because I'm not afraid of anything. Because fear is another thing that men fight to not be identified with. You will not be able to be your authentic self without embracing vulnerability. Because being vulnerable is human. I recently started reading this book called Cry Like a Man by Jason Wilson. And in the book, he talks about emotional incarceration, right? That's the emotional prison that most men live in because of erroneous childhood upbringings. This is at the root of toxic masculinity, which is something I am going to talk about in the coming weeks. But if you're going to thrive at love and life, then you need to value vulnerability. We're not required to be vulnerable with everyone. But when you start to address it, start with the folk in your house. Start with the people who live with you, your children. Your children need you to be vulnerable. Your wife needs you to be vulnerable. The truth is, it is only when we learn to be vulnerable as men that we can truly be strong. Okay, vulnerability will affect your love, your compassion, your gentleness, your creativity, your influence, and your happiness. Yeah. Embrace vulnerability. And if you have an issue with being vulnerable, get some help. Because without it, you won't be able to thrive. Nope, you won't. And then the 6th one, the last one, is connected to vulnerability, but it's emotional maturity. That's the 6th and last value, emotional maturity. And I've talked about emotional maturity a lot. You guys, if you follow me, you're probably tired of hearing that from me. But it's a big deal, okay? To recap, in order to thrive, let me just go through these. In order to thrive, you need to value time, humility. You need to value responsibility. You need to value insight, vulnerability, and now this last one, emotional maturity. Okay? The more I grow in my own personal life, the more I realize that the first place that I need to change always starts in the area of emotional maturity every single time. When I hit a roadblock and how am I going to fix this? How do I need to grow? What do I need to do? When I trace it to its root, it's emotional immaturity. Remember, emotional maturity is not about what you feel. It's about what you do with what you feel, right? The goal in life is to mature in love. Living as an adult child can be very frustrating. Without emotional maturity, you will not be able to thrive You would not be able to live from an authentic place, and you cannot experience the fullness of joy that comes with loving and being loved. Now, what are some signs of emotional immaturity? I'll give you some of these, because some of these may surprise you. You may not have known, oh, that's emotional immaturity. The first one, pettiness. So this may seem like a cultural term, but when someone is petty, very emotionally immature. I don't mean joking. Like, I don't mean, joking petty, but like, people who need to get you back, need to pay you back. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That's emotional immaturity, right? Here's another one. Unable to express how you feel. Shutting down instead of talking. Unresolved anger. Now, how do you know when there's unresolved anger? Well, you know there's unresolved anger when someone does something at level 3, but you respond at level 10. There's 7 levels that you skipped because there's probably some unresolved anger in there, and it's probably from childhood. Yeah. Another sign of being emotionally immature is not apologizing. You might not, that one may have missed you. Yeah. If you can't apologize, that is an emotionally immature concept, or you're at an emotionally immature level if you can't say, hey, I messed up. Arrogance and pride are signs of immaturity. But here's something else that you may not know, may not have thought of as emotional immaturity. Not having a prayer life is a sign of immaturity. Believe it or not, that's not a Christian statement. Let you think about it for a minute. That's not a Christian statement. It applies to Christians, but it applies to everybody. Not having a prayer life is a sign of immaturity. Why is that? Well, because in your human arrogance, you've determined that you don't need to ask your higher power for any advice, any direction, any whatever. Now, if you are your higher power, well, then there you go. Like, okay, it's same thing. All right. You should note that your spiritual maturity will parallel your emotional maturity. And so, for those of you who know me and come to see me, and you are these, deep Christians, what does your marriage look like? Because your emotional maturity and your spiritual maturity, they will go hand in hand, right? And to be honest, all of this work is what we call spiritual work, right? And the reason we call it spiritual work, because we're not working on things that are tangible, like working out. I'm working out and I'm building muscles. That's something tangible. But all the things that I'm naming, all of these are spiritual things because they're intangible. That's what we mean by spiritual. I don't know if you knew that, but all of these things that I'm talking about are spiritual things. My goal is to shift your mind so that your words and your behavior will follow, right? These are the 6 areas that you need to value if you're going to thrive at love and life. Okay? So, time, humility, responsibility, insight, vulnerability, and emotional maturity. Okay? Thank you guys for watching and listening. If you have questions, I'm open to those right now. Let's see what you guys have going on. Look like you guys were saying things while let's see. Is it possible to send out the notes I'm listening as I work out? That's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that, but I think I can create some notes for this. Not my notes, but I can get you some notes from my notes. I ain't got no problem with that. Deactivate the buttons. Absolutely. That's your responsibility. People come in my office and they say, well, so one partner will say, he did such and such, and he did such and such. And his response will be, well, yeah, but you know why I did that? I did that because you did this. And I said, no. That's not true. And I always use this example. You probably have heard this example before if you've been watching me long enough. If you slap me and I slap you back, I cannot say that the reason I slapped you is because you slapped me. That is not true. The reason I slapped you is because of how I respond to being slapped. Because otherwise, if it's always a cause and effect, then every time somebody slaps, somebody responds. Same way with getting cursed out. One person gets cursed out and they pray for the cursor. Another person gets cursed out and they want to fight. The difference is in the person, what's going on in the person who receives it, not the person giving it. The person who's giving it, yeah, they got their own issues, right? But that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is you and your buttons and deactivating them, right? So that you can still be a respectable person, regardless of what they are doing or being. You feel me? All right. So any questions while I am here? If not, you guys always feel free to email me whatever questions you have. But let me know. Wait a few more minutes. And then I got a question in email. Let me see if I can find it. I didn't fully understand it, but I was going to try to address it. Let me see if the guy responded, because I asked him for clarification. One thing he did say was he just said dealing with conviction of your action, dealing with the conviction of your action. So I'm gonna just talk about that real quick, right? Dealing with the conviction of your actions. First of all, the fact that you're convicted is a good thing. Conviction and condemnation are not the same things, right? So when I'm convicted of something, I feel bad. I'm remorseful. Condemnation is when I beat myself up and say I'm no good, and there's no hope in condemnation. But handling your conviction, it sounds like if you're trying to handle your convictions after you've done something, then you're probably walking in condemnation, and you want to have some self-compassion. That's another thing there's no place for C in Thrive. But self-compassion, you're not going to thrive without self-compassion. Why? Because a lot of the ways that we're raised, to be tough and rough. But sometimes as human beings, we need to cut ourselves some slack. We need to give ourselves a break. We need to give ourselves a second chance. Did you know that talking crazy to yourself is not going to make you perform better no more than talking crazy to your child? It's going to make them perform better. Well, let me say this. You may get different results while crushing their character. That ain't what you want. Why do you want to do that? It doesn't work. So don't beat yourself up that way. I hope I answered that question. That was about as good as I can do. Anyway, I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. If there's something that you want me to address specifically, email it to me. Let me know. We can do that. Otherwise, thank you guys for joining. I hope this was good for you. Hopefully it was insightful. As always, like and share, especially on YouTube. Like, subscribe, share. And I love it when you make comments too. Leave a comment if you feel like it. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me this evening, and you guys enjoy the rest of your week.